when you have an insecure attachment, essentially you did not receive that emotional attunement that you needed for healthy development, right? And so a child will generally go in one of two ways. They'll either develop an anxious attachment or they'll develop an avoidant attachment. And these are maladaptations that they develop early on to try to survive their home of origin, the situation that they're in. These patterns, they get etched into our subconscious really early and they follow us into adulthood. And because it's in our subconscious mind, people are unaware of it. It's not in our conscious mind, right? Our conscious awareness. So they're
Mhm.
unaware that their patterns are just repeats of things that they've been doing for years and years and years on a sort of survival mode. Interesting about our subconscious mind is that we are always, even if we know better, we're always drawn to what's familiar. So if we
Mhm.
grew up in chaos, that's what we know. So that's what we know love to be. So we will be drawn to that, right? So those
Mhm.
butterflies that we feel, and Disney did us no favors by talking about butterflies. That's nervous system actually. That's a sign of dysregulation. That's your body's telling you, I don't feel safe in this situation or in this moment or with this person. But we've romanticized it to mean intimacy or love, or it's more a state of limerence, which
Yes.
is like a state of obsession. But I wanna back up for a moment and talk about anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. They come from similar places, but a little bit different. So the child that grows up in a home where they didn't receive predictable love or predictable emotional attunement, they would have developed an anxious attachment. They would have learned early on that the way to get the attention of their parents or love is through earning. They would have become mother's little helper. At school, they would have become the teacher's pet. And children will naturally do this because the desire to hold on to that connection is so important for a child. In fact, when we're young, like 0 to 5, our survival is dependent on that connection. Literally,
Mhm.
we cannot survive. And so the child finds ways, to stay in the good graces, to earn the love of the parent, right? Now, this is always because either there's a fear of or there has been a true situation of abandonment, right? So the core wound of the anxious, preoccupied person is I will be abandoned, right? If I am not, my most pleasant, congenial self, and I show people my true breadth of who I am, my authenticity, they will leave me. And so I'll hide that and I'll just be as pleasant as possible. There is no easier way in life than to make people like you than to just say yes to everything.
Yes.
Right? And so this behavior, this pattern becomes really destructive as you get older. So think of the friend who is always there for you, middle of the night, you need a ride to the airport. No problem. I'll come pick you up. They're always there when you have a crisis. And of course, as we're going to get into it, I think a little bit later, these patterns show up strongest in a romantic context and in the bedroom. So when your focus is always on pleasing someone else to the detriment of getting to know yourself, understanding your needs, communicating your needs, but just focusing on pleasing someone else to stave off that I will be abandoned, you could already get a sense of what might be transpiring as a dynamic in the bedroom. I
Yes.
see you shaking your head. You're going, I see where this is going. Usually, we see people who become more avoidant in the scenario whereby there is childhood neglect.
Okay.
So the parent is there, but emotionally, tuned out. Maybe there's too many children in the home. Maybe the home is very stoic, right? There's no I love yous, there's no hugging. The child generally spends a lot of time alone. Maybe there's a lot of judgment, harsh criticism. I can never do right by my parents. The child learns that the parent is not a source of comfort, right? And so they become hyper independent. They develop an attitude of it's me, myself, and I've got to carry myself through life. There's no one's going to save me. And so they develop a whole set of maladaptations to protect themselves. Essentially, they start to suppress their emotions. What we say about avoidance is they underfeel. And anxious people, anxious attachers, tend to overfeel. So the fourth category is actually a melange. It's a mix. It's called the fearful avoidant, sometimes also called the disorganized attacher. And this person generally grows up in a home where there is extreme amounts of chaos, instability, a lot of conflict, and or abuse, any kind of abuse. And what happens is that the child becomes disorganized in their psyche in terms of how to feel about their caregiver. In the
Mhm.
scenario by which the child wants to maintain the connection and will generally run towards a parent for comfort and support, but parent is also harming the child becomes very confused because they want to move towards you, but they're also afraid. And so they move back. And so we
Mhm.
see this, especially as they get older, this pattern of oscillation. They come close, they get scared, they're sort of known romantically as the hot and the cold partner. And
Okay.
this is because their patterning tells them that, yes, I want to feel love, but if I get too close, I'm going to get harmed. And the fearful avoidant, depending on who they're interfacing with, can oscillate. So if a fearful avoidant, for example, is dating someone who is more dismissive avoidant, their anxious side comes out. They can become the active pursuer.
Mm.
If they're dating someone who is anxiously attached, they tend to become much more avoidant.